Hi guys, Steve from Patriot Bars here. Today we're going to cover the basics of striking with an emphasis on real-world practicality. So, stay tuned. Now, I'm not a professional fighter or a martial artist, as I'm sure you can tell. So if that's a deal breaker for you, go ahead and click away right now. I'll wait. However, I have been training for quite a while now, and I wanted to do a video that covers, all the basic strikes. Not grappling, mind you. But all the basic strikes, starting with the very basics of sparring or fighting, for those just starting out, for beginners. And we're going to move through it pretty quick here. And we're going to try to be as practical as possible, focusing on strikes that you can pull off, without being Jean-Claude Van Damme. Because you know what? I'm no Jean-Claude, and maybe you're not either. So let's roll right into it. Let's punch right into it. Let's punch it, Chewie. Yeah, that's what I should have said. Now I think it's important to always warm up first. Oftentimes I train outside in the cold. I live in Michigan, USA. Right in the house here it's about 60 degrees. That's not so bad. But nonetheless, I think we need to warm up. Jumping jacks. Now I'm not going to do giant long sets of these. I'm just going to show you a few examples of good warm-ups. Cage jacks. What is cage jacks? Pretend you're in a power cage. Cage jacks. I think these are called seal jacks. Side twists. Let's see, what else do we have? Arm rotations. Better watch that thing behind me. My speed bag. Arm rotations. Up, back, over. Press, press, fling. Little going forward. Neck rotations. Easy to pull a muscle in the neck. Can opener. Basically, warming up the hips. Squat, ass to grass, and leg swings. Good old broomstick and leg swings. I've long had a little bit of problems with my hips, but leg swings help me open those hips up. I'm cold, and these help. Another one, I think they call this Frankenstein walk. Frankenstein. Stu Smith brought this to everybody's attention. Frankenstein walk. Alright, I think we're good and warm. Let's get right into it. Now would be a good time for a little disclaimer, I think. Fighting is dangerous. And outside of combat sports such as boxing, mixed martial arts, full contact, karate, or wrestling, what have you, outside of those sanctioned sporting events, fighting should never be done irresponsibly. Now, what do I mean? What's the difference? Well, if you're a man, it's your job to be as strong and tough as you can, so that you can defend those who are vulnerable. Whether they be members of your own family, friends, or just the community in general. So, you see the difference there? You're not fighting over petty rivalries. You're doing what's right. And bad guys can smell weakness, so don't be weak. There may come a time when you have to defend yourself or others with nothing but your bare hands. And the power of your hands, in other words, the power of the strikes you make with your arms, it comes from your fighting stance. Now, your fighting stance should be balanced. About the same amount of weight on each leg. I'm not leaning forward, and I'm not leaning backwards. I know some weird stances out there do that, but in general, you want to have the same amount of weight. You want your dominant hand, in my case my right hand, because I'm right-handed, you want it back, and my left hand is in front. My right leg is in back, and my left leg is in front, like such. I like to be balanced right in the middle. Now, you want to clench your jaw. And whatever you do, don't jut your chin out. Don't keep your chin forward. You want your jaw clenched and your chin tucked like such. Chin tucked, jaw clenched. And whatever you do, if you start to get out of breath, don't pant like a dog if you're winded. That's a good way to bite your tongue off if you get socked in the mouth. Clench your teeth, breathe through them if you have to, but honestly, I think it's better to try to breathe through both your mouth and nose at the same time. I'll have to shut up and try to show you what I'm talking about. My teeth are touching. And I'm breathing through both my nostrils and my teeth, but I'm not letting my tongue protrude where if I get socked, I can bite my tongue off. Because, in the street, you're not going to have a mouth guard. Now, one other thing I want to mention. A lot of people say, well, my right hand is my strong hand, my left hand is my weak hand. Well, a better way to think about that is my left hand is my strong hand, my right hand is my even stronger hand. Strong hand, stronger hand. Booyah. Now, just to reiterate, if you're right-handed, your right arm and your right leg are in the back, like such. If you're left-handed, it's reversed. But what you don't want to do is something weird like this, because that feels weird. Don't do this. See? Wrong. Correct. Now, the traditional boxing guard where your big gloves are up by your face like this, or even up higher like this, well, I feel that's not really practical if you're not boxing. So what I like to do is I like to keep my arms a bit further out, and my fists aren't always going to be clenched the whole time either, because squeezing real hard, well, it wastes some of your energy and it makes you too tense. You don't want to be tense. You want to kind of flow, like Bruce Lee would say, flow like water.
Be water, my friend.
Your fists, however, must be clenched at the point of impact. Clench at the point of impact. If you're going to use this method, you have to practice clenching your fist at the point of impact. Now, this is more of a squared-off stance. A traditional karate stance is sometimes called a bladed stance. Sometimes also used in boxing, but a little bit different. See, I'm standing to the side and my groin is less exposed. It's harder to kick me in the crotch. My front leg can throw a side kick easier, and my rear leg, my back leg can throw a front kick easier from the bladed stance. Now, I'm no Thai boxer, but their stance is more squared off as well, so that they can throw those round kicks, but I digress. Now remember to exhale with every strike. It forces you to breathe. The worst thing you can do is hold your breath during any type of athletic movement or fight. So you must force yourself to breathe with every strike. Otherwise, you'll lose energy very quickly. Now, you don't have to scream and yip like in the karate movies, where they're like, whoa. No, you don't have to do that. And you don't have to holler either. That holler is called a ki, and it's mostly used for breaking boards and stuff like that. But yeah, some noise will come out of your mouth, and that's a good thing. Don't hold it back. And you might be wondering, well, how do you make a proper fist? Well, it's pretty simple. You just fold your fingers down and fold your thumb over like that. What you don't do is stick your thumb up like this, and you don't leave your fingers down like that. So get a little closer, proper fist, squeeze it as tight as you can at the point of impact. Now, a little bit of a funny story, and an exception to the rule is, my sister was a professional fighter. She used to have long nails and fight at the same time. I'm not sure how she managed to do that, but I think she once told me that in her gloves, she actually did do the improper fist, but she had the big 16-ounce boxing gloves on. I think they were 16 ounces, or whatever her fight gloves were. They're probably 12s maybe. But in any case, if you're a girl and you have long nails and for some reason you can't make the fist because of your long nails, well, you might consider not even punching to begin with if you find yourself in a self-defense situation. Maybe use your nails to scratch at your adversary's eyes, because I can definitely see how that would prevent you from making a fist, long nails. And girls, if you do have to use your nails to defend yourself against an attacker, the best way to do it isn't, like a Catwoman scratch like this. The best way to do it is to pretend this is the side of his face. Well, your hands are near the side. Go like this, shove both your thumbs right into the eyeballs, and just dig, 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 dig. It's very hard to attack when your eyeballs are being digged out. So there you go. Now, what knuckles do you hit with? Well, there's lots of debate here, but we won't get into that. I like the first two knuckles, but let's be realistic about it. It's basically whatever lands. just keep your fists tight upon impact. You don't know what part of your opponent's face or body you're going to hit, or what knuckles are going to come in contact with what. So be realistic about it, and it's whatever lands. Now, to move while in your fighting stance, well, it's like a shuffle, okay? What I'm doing is shuffling forward, shuffling backwards, and I'm making sure my legs do not cross. In other words, I'm not walking. Why? Because when you cross your legs, when your legs are together, even for an instant, you can get knocked over or taken to the ground much easier. So you have to try to maintain about the same distance between your legs when you're going in any direction. To reiterate, you should try to keep about the same distance between your feet, regardless of which direction you're moving. Shuffle. Head movement is very important and sometimes overlooked. You don't have to move your head an excessive amount, you just have to get your head out of the line of the other guy's punch. So you can move your head, left and right, just a little bit, backwards like you're giving yourself a double chin, or you can use your legs to slip. It's kind of like a mini duck. My head isn't moving very far, but notice that I'm not bending at the waist, and I'm not doing a squat. I'm not doing a squat. That's very tiring. My feet and my hips are doing the pivoting here. Now, moving your entire body backwards can work pretty good too, but you've got to be aware of what's behind you. A wall, a drop off like a ditch if you're on the street, a crowd of people, the edge of a street. You got to be aware of that. So simply moving backwards, might not be the best option. Now, sidestepping can be an option. Lateral side steps, or some kind of little pivot. But the pivot, admittedly, is kind of hard. So I think, honestly, it's better just to circle. Your opponent comes in, you circle. I think you get it. Circle. To reiterate, don't just stand there like a punching bag or just go forward and backwards. That's too easy to predict. What you've got to do is incorporate enough movement so that you're hard to hit, but don't be crazy about it. Excessive movement will tire you out faster. So you have to make yourself a hard target, so to speak, but don't be foolish about it. This ain't dancing. You just have to make it a little bit hard for your opponent to tell where your head's going to be. Now remember, when punching or kicking, you have to make sure that you don't hyperextend your arm or hyperextend your leg. That can cause a painful injury. And likewise, when you're holding pads for your partner, don't pull the pad back unexpectedly, because then they might be tempted to hyperextend and then you will cause them a painful injury. So to reiterate, you always have to remember to keep a slight bend in your elbow while punching. Slight bend, never fully extend it out, that's a hyperextension right there. And a slight bend in your kneecap when kicking. Slight bend, never fully straight. So always force yourself to think, don't hyperextend, slight bend. See what I did there with the little rhyme? Whatever. Now remember, you punch with your whole body, not just your arms. Your torso and your legs are heavily involved. See what I mean? I'm basically doing the punching movement without my arms. Now add your arms in. Just like that. See, when we practice without a bag, what we're doing is called shadowboxing here. Now, we're not looking at our own shadow on a wall or anything like that. It just means throwing punches into the air, moving around, and practicing. As opposed to bag work, where you're hitting a punching bag, usually a heavy bag, or what's called mitt work, where you're working with a partner. I don't have a partner here, but the partner would be holding either focus mitts, used in boxing, or tie pads, like I have here. Often used for kicking sports like karate, martial arts, and Thai boxing. And before I forget, this thing behind me, well, that's called a speed bag. It's used for boxing. You're not supposed to kick it, but what the heck, I enjoy doing that, so whatever.
And you can't hit a speed bag? What kind of training is that?
Now the jab is a fast punch. With your lead hand, you can pivot a little into the jab for more power. Now the cross, with your backhand, it doesn't really cross your body that much more than the jab. But there is usually more body pivot. Watch my back heel here. I'm pivoting, but it stays planted on the ground at all times. Now a hook punch hooks in from the side, the target usually being the jaw or side of the head. I like to think of hooks as either strict hooks or wind-up hooks. You know, with a little mustard on them. Hooks should be set up with straight punches first. Any wind-up hooks should be used with caution because they're basically haymakers and they leave you wide open on this side. Now, especially when you're first starting out, don't go crazy on the heavy bag with your hooks. You could hurt your arm that way. Every time I go crazy on the heavy bag with hooks, to this day I have problems with the side of my arms where my rotator cuffs are, but the straight punches don't seem to bother me. You might be the same way, so just exercise caution. Now, the uppercut isn't a punch that is as likely to land as your straight punches and hooks, but there's no reason not to practice it anyway. You can throw it from the rear or the front. The target is usually the other guy's jaw up under here. But in some cases, the uppercut can be thrown to the body as well, such as when you're clinching. Now, body shots are punches thrown to your opponent's body. Both the liver shot and the spleen shot go to your opponent's body. The liver shot goes to your adversary's right side, and the spleen shot goes to your adversary's left side, kind of hooking up with your target being right here and right here. Now, the kidneys are on the rear of the body, thus the term kidney punch. Now, kidney punches are dangerous, they're illegal in boxing, and should only be used in self-defense. Now, rabbit punches, they're to the back of the head. They're illegal in all combat sports, I think, and they're really only to be used in a life or death situation, because if you rabbit punch somebody, you can give them brain damage. Now, the right body shot is a right straight to the body. Mostly used in boxing where knees and kicks aren't allowed. As you can see, your head goes dangerously low when you throw that right body shot. Now, there's a lot of debate as to what the right way to throw an overhand right is. But frankly, I don't care. I think the difference is that you orient your body down and to the side when you throw it, as opposed to a straight punch, overhand. At least that's the way I like to do it. Now, others throw it vastly differently, but I don't like the other wonky varieties where you hit with different parts of your hand. I still try to hit with the first two knuckles. Now, you have to see for yourself what works and what doesn't work. You know, what you saw a YouTuber or even a professional fighter do in a fight, well, it doesn't mean jack squat if you can't do it safely and effectively yourself. Now, you can pretty much throw any punch with any hand, but this basic arrangement seems to work the best because of the stance that you're in. Jab, cross, hook, overhand, body shot, uppercut. Now, I'm in the right-handed stance. If you're a lefty, or if you just want to practice fighting southpaw, then reverse everything that we just covered. Now that you understand the basic punches, you can put them together into combinations or combos. If you hear someone call combos or are listening to a tape with combos being called, well, a 1 is a jab, a 2 is a jab cross, a 3 is a jab cross hook, a 4 is a jab cross hook cross. Okay? After that, it gets very confusing. So that's all I have to say on the subject. But work on creating your own combos. That's the only way to see how your body moves with each strike. Now it's important to remember not to telegraph. In other words, don't pull your hands back prior to punching unless you're deliberately winding up a hook. Also, don't look at the target that you're trying to strike. You want to look roughly at your opponent's chest, not his eyes. Now, the only time you might break the rule about not crossing your legs when you're in your fighting stance is when you are chasing a target backwards or the target is chasing you backwards. See, if you're being flurried with punches, you may have to walk step backwards while throwing your own counter punches. Likewise, if you're chasing an adversary that's reeling, you may have to do the same thing forwards. Now, the reason for this is because you can generate a lot more power, and after you've been hit a few times, it's very hard to, do your shuffle steps forward and your shuffle steps back. Bottom line is, you're going to be groggy, he might be groggy, so at that point, you're just kind of walk punching. Now, can you break your hands when punching? Of course. The nose, the jaw, the eyes, they're safer targets. They're softer targets. You should avoid deliberately aiming for the forehead or the skull. The bad guy's head's going to be moving around. Your head's going to be moving around. So you never really know what part of your fist is going to land and what part of his head or face or body your knuckles will actually land on. So don't deliberately aim for the hard stuff, the cranium, but you never really know what's going to get hit. So you really do have to focus on that tight fist at all times. Now, some people recommend palm heel strikes. Now, I don't really like them unless maybe your hand is already broken, or if you have to hit someone wearing, I don't know, a motorcycle helmet or something like that, or if the top of the guy's head is the only target available, like, when he's shooting in or something like that, and you're trying not to get taken down. Now, I think if you do have to do a palm heel strike, the open hand version of the palm heel strike works better, as opposed to the karate style with your fingers down like this. But that's just my personal opinion. Also, I like to throw a few strikes high. In case my opponent or adversary is significantly taller than me. A lot of people throw all their practice punches to the level of their own face and chin. A mistake, in my opinion. Now that you understand the basic punches and combinations, you can work the bag by moving in and out and around the bag if you can. Snapping your punches a little instead of trying to punch through the bag most of the time. Now in a second here, we're going to look at some other arm strikes, elbows and back fists. As far as elbows go, the only type of elbow I like is the straight shot in only, like a push almost with your forearm. Don't bother with the other elbows. You gotta be careful with elbows regardless of how you throw them. If you do manage to hit your funny bone on your opponent's head, your hand can go numb. That's why I like this version of the elbow the best, because it's basically like a forearm strike. What about the back fist? The back fist is just a strike to the side. Usually hitting with this part of your fist, kind of like a hammer. Now in the movies, or if you have that karate stance, I think Bruce Lee would throw the back fist like that. I don't really like that. And then of course there's that famous scene with Arnold. Yeah, who could forget that one? But in any case, spinning back fists and all kinds of fancy stuff, I usually don't bother with them. Now both elbows and back fists can be used if your opponent's on the side of you, such as if you're being surrounded, maybe you're in a crowded bar or in a crowd of people and you're being surrounded and all of a sudden you're being attacked. But you should not get in the habit of fighting sideways. You have to square up to your opponent as soon as possible. And speaking of, being surrounded, if you're confronted with multiple opponents, let's say I've got 3 guys coming at me, well, I don't want to go forward towards the middle guy. Why? Because I'm surrounded. I got fists coming from here, here, here. I'm just going to get knocked out. So what you want to do is do not let them surround you. Square off with one opponent at a time. Continue to move, forcing your opponents to move so that you're essentially only fighting one guy at a time. Because if you try to fight 3 guys at a time, that's 6 fists against your 2, you're probably not going to win. Now, before we cover some basic kicks, let's look at defense a little bit more. Now, we already talked about head movements, which is arguably your best defense. But what about blocking? We're not going to take a deep dive into blocking because it's hard to pull off, but let's go over some basics. Now, I call this one the front guard and chin tuck. Now, if you are on the ground or against the wall or being hit by multiple attackers, you may have to use this one. It's basically like a turtle hiding in its shell. You can't stay that way forever. Eventually they'll knock you out. You got to fight to get back to a better position and then start attacking. Now the telephone block is useful against round kicks or hooks to the side of the head, but only if you can see them coming in time. The forearm block. Now this type of block intercepts a blow, a punch or what have you at about the midpoint. And we've all seen this in movies and TV, like the old Western movies where the drunk guy would be like, I'm going to take your head off, and he'll go, ah! And then John Wayne or Clint Eastwood goes, okay? So that's movies and TV, but in real life it's very hard to pull off. Now, in my opinion, the main reason to use this type of forearm block is in knife defense, when you really don't want that knife coming down at you if it's a downward stab. Now you can use it while throwing your almost simultaneous counterpunch. Okay? Believe it or not, your best defense against an attacker with a knife, if you are not carrying a gun, is just knocking your attacker out or kicking him away. And we'll cover kicks later in the video. Now the best defense against body shots aimed at you is to just tighten your abs. Now you can also crunch your elbow down like this, but as you can see that leaves your head wide open. Now you can toughen your core, midsection, abs, whatever the heck you want to call it, with the Farmer Burns exercise. The way to do that is to tighten your abdomen like this, but don't vacuum suck it in. Breathe behind your shield and exhale in S breaths. Keep everything tight, exhale in those S breaths. This will train your transverse abdominis, allowing you to absorb more punishment in your abs and midsection. But in a nutshell, blocking basically sucks. Action is faster than reaction. It's important that if you're going to be in a fight to stay on the offensive, and for the most part, use blocks only if you can see the strike coming from a mile away, or if you're being flurried or hit from multiple directions by multiple people. But then, when an opening appears, you got to go back on the offensive, back on the attack. Now this is never more true than when you're being attacked with a knife. If you try to block that knife, your opponent is just going to cut you apart like a turkey. You'll bleed out before you are able to successfully block, regardless of what you've seen on TV. You need to knock him out. That's the way to save yourself if you get attacked by a knife. Now, some people practice parrying punches and are actually pretty good at it sometimes. However, it's very hard, it takes a lot of practice, and I never bother with it. One thing I do like to do, however, is to practice counterpunching, where you move your head offline while immediately counterpunching, simultaneously throwing your own punch. And you can work that into your shadowboxing and bagwork. Imagine that you're evading a punch and then immediately throwing a counterpunch. And before I forget, neck exercises are mandatory. A strong neck and jaw have saved more than a few, including myself, from being seriously injured after taking blows to the head. Now, you've heard the term glass jaw. Well, don't be one. Exercise your neck, exercise your jaw. Maybe we'll do a neck training video in the future. Now let's take a look at some practical kicks. Now, what do I mean by practical kicks? Well, think about it. Kicking can be dangerous to you as well. Some people can kick to their opponent's face, but unless you are extremely skilled, that's not a very safe move. It's too easy to be knocked down when you have one leg high in the air like that. Now, in a street fight, I want to stay on my feet, not hit the pavement for any reason. Now, I'm no karate master. I'm no Jean-Claude Van Damme or Bruce Lee. I never really prioritized kicks in my training, and I kind of regret that. So I never really got good at kicks. However, to wipe kicks out entirely would be a mistake. So let's go over a few practical kicks. Now, the front kick is just a kick with either your front or your back leg. It goes out in front, therefore it's called the front kick. Now, you can throw the front kick low to the groin. And by the way, let's talk about groin shots or nut shots real quick. You don't want to be kicking people in the groin willy-nilly. You don't want to be kicking people in the groin for any reason other than extreme self-defense, okay? If you get in a fight with another dude over some simple little thing, do not kick him in the groin, okay? But women, girls, if you're attacked, go ahead and go for that nut shot. We'll cover a little bit more about ways to kick to the groin later, but right now let's stick to front kicks. You can throw that front kick to the groin. You can throw it to the belly. If you're skilled, you might be able to throw it to the face, but it lacks a little bit of power unless you have extreme skill there. Now, I call this the front mule kick. It's a slow but hard kick, like you're kicking a door or maybe kicking a drunk guy back. Essentially, you're winding up a little more on it. You're not flicking it out. Mule kick. Now, the side kick is a kick going to the side, usually from some kind of bladed karate stance. Now, my side kicks aren't any good because I haven't practiced them all that much. And generally, if I'm going to side kick, I want to keep the kick low, my objective being to knock somebody away from me if I'm being attacked from the side or something like that. But the side kick's just not a big part of my life. Round kicks. Now, we used to call these turning kicks. I like to keep them low to the legs or the ribs, like a body blow. Now, some guys can easily throw round kicks to the head or even break baseball bats in half with their shins, but I can't. Nonetheless, another tool in the toolbox. Now, what about knees? Well, I think knees should usually go to the groin or the belly. Now, in mixed martial arts or maybe Muay Thai, they curve the knees around to avoid a low blow, but our context isn't sport fighting here. Now, knees can also go to your adversary's head. However, you have to pull their head down first, behind like this, pulling their face down into your knee. And when it comes to hitting with the knee, try to avoid the very end and hit with this part right here, kind of like a hammer. Now, real quick, let's look at what I like to call rising kicks. And they're all front kicks, by the way. Instead of hitting with the ball of your foot, you're basically rising and hitting with the shin. So basically, if you're going to hit somebody in the groin, you can go straight in with the front kick, or you could rise up with that front kick, trying to come right up under the groin if their legs are spread. Whereas if their legs are a little bit less spread, then trying to shoot in with that front kick makes more sense. So basically, an upward groin kick, like such, you can step into it a bit. You can basically use either side, your left or your right, to throw that. And then there's one other kick, I don't remember what it's called. It's a little forward hop kick, a surprise little kick to your opponent's nuts. Now, I said it before and I'll say it again, be very careful with these kicks. Practice them for self-defense only. Practice them on pads or a wrecking ball like I was doing. Never practice on a person, even if they're wearing a cup. Remember, kicking somebody in the nuts is not a joke, it's not a game. You can ruin their life, you can rupture their testicles. Don't ever do it unless you absolutely have to defend your life. Real quick, let's cover a defense called the sprawl. This takes your legs back and out of the way in the event someone tries to grapple you. Your objective is to land basically on your opponent's head, neck, and shoulders. But this is not a grappling video. The good thing about the sprawl is that it can be used as a conditioning drill similar to a burpee. Sprawl, burpee. Sprawl, burpee. Now, it's important to remember, let's say you get knocked down. Well, it's important to get up while protecting your face. Don't rise up like this and wait for the guy to kick you. You can also create some space. Let's say you're on the ground, maybe you roll a little bit backwards and then you stand up. But whatever you do, don't make yourself an easy target for that front kick, punch, knee under the chin, then you're knocked out, so don't do that. No, I forgot to mention, what if someone tries to kick you in the groin? Well, in my opinion, the best defense against any groin kick is just crunching your knee up. Crunch your knee up, then getting it back down, and then counterattacking. Crunch, counterattack. Okay? So, where does this defense come from? Krav Maga, good old Krav Maga. But the bottom line is, if you try to go down like this to block, now you're wide open here. So that get the leg in there and get it back down fast defense is the one that I like. Now, is this every punch, kick, and fighting technique in existence? Of course not. Your own abilities determine what techniques you should use and what techniques you shouldn't use. That's why I pick these, because these are the ones that I like. But you have to decide for yourself what you like based on your experience level and, most importantly, your physical abilities. However, I think most people can learn the strikes that we went over in this video pretty quickly, even when they're first starting out. Now, if you're a beginner, if you're just starting out, it can be tempting to ask, should I do this in a fight? Should I do that in a fight? Well, you know what? If you have to ask, the answer is probably no. You know, like my old instructor, Powell, we used to call him Paul. Well, like he once said to me, Steve, fighting isn't math, because I used to bombard him with a bunch of questions. Remember, fighting is your physical abilities and your conditioning, not math. And also, in a street fight, keep your chin down and just keep punching. Clench your teeth. So if you're new to all this, it's important not to get caught up in dogma, theory, and endless YouTube videos and fighting systems. You know, that's a dead end, guys. You are what you do, not what you watch. So getting out there and practicing the best way you can, that's how to win here. You should focus on your conditioning, like running, you know, keeping your body fat levels to a reasonable level. Calisthenics and weighted calisthenics, we like that here at Patriot Bars. Some compounds lifts, as well as stretching and mobility training. Now, you can hit a heavy bag if you have one, but remember, shadowboxing is free, running is free. Now, bodybuilding and powerlifting, they do little to nothing to improve performance in martial arts, combat sports, or tactical fitness, in my opinion. Controversial, yeah. If you disagree, well, maybe let the hate flow in the comments below. But anyways, I digress. And I should mention one more thing. Is Patriot Bars down for the count? Well, sort of. At least the manufacturing wing of Patriot Bars anyways. See, I decided that we're not going to manufacture any more new products. We're just going to sell out what we have. We're selling out all remaining inventory at very reasonable prices, I might add. All our products are made right here in Michigan, USA, and I assure you, as long as our website's online and we have no intention of taking it down, we are still fully operational. Most of our orders are processed and shipped the next business day. We will be open during the holidays, Christmas and New Year of 25 and 26, so we're not closing down at all. You can place an order at any time. As far as our inventory levels, we're running out of pull-up bars. I think we only have like 3 black pull-up bars left, so if you had your eye on anything from Patriot Bars, now might be a good time to pull the trigger on that purchase, so to speak. We offer free shipping to anywhere in the United States. Head on over to patriotbars.com to check out what we have to offer. I appreciate your view of this video as well as your support of Patriot Bars and my channel. Now guys, this isn't a video about sparring, but you gotta remember, in any kind of fight, whether it's a real fight or a sport fight, you're gonna get hit. And you gotta not be scared of it and prepare yourself for it. Now, professional fighters, they have people punch them to toughen them up, or they have people hit them with little sticks. I'm not sure what kind of sticks they are in their legs to help toughen their legs up. But what if you're by yourself? What do? Well, you won't be able to duplicate what they can do, but what you can do is basically just carefully hit yourself. Now, how do you do it? Well, hit yourself in the leg, not the groin. Hit yourself in the stomach. Don't hit yourself in the inside of the leg, but try to toughen up that outside of the leg. Your face, not your eyes, not your nose. I'll show you what I mean. Not as bad as somebody else hit me. Tightening that leg up, tightening that leg up. Tightening my abs. Clenching my jaw. And doing my best. See? Who says selfish size doesn't work? Booyah. Anyways, this is Steve from Patriot Bars, signing off. Train hard. God bless America. Or whatever it is that you happen to live, my friend.